Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us for our July edition of YC Live. We are so happy to be here with you tonight. My name is Jemiah Lewis, and I'm the youth organizer for the Youth and College Division.
My name is Desmond Seymour. I'm the College and Young Adult Organizer for the Youth and College Division.
And my name is Sammy Dow. I'm the NAACP-YC Director.
And we have a couple of great co-hosts here with us tonight. We have Avery Jackson, and we also have Carlton Mayers. So Avery Jackson, would you say hey to the audience, tell them a little bit about yourself and also what you've been working on?
Good evening. My name is Avery Jackson. I am a sophomore at Morehouse College, but I am from Des Moines, Iowa, representing Region 4. And I have been working on a gun violence campaign trying to target the youth, but with the movement for the youth, by the youth. And we've been putting on some events. We've been doing some canvassing. We're planning a summit that will go on here in a couple weeks where we're trying to get 110 youth that do not normally attend summits to come together and to really address the issue and provide solutions to those who are receiving resources to do so.
Great. Thank you so much, Avery. We look forward to hearing some more from you tonight. Now, Carlton Mayer, we're so glad to have you. Carlton is from our Criminal Justice Department. So Carlton, tonight we're going to be focusing on gun violence for this issue, so we thought it would be great to have you on. If you could just give us a quick update about what's been going on with criminal justice, that would be great.
Yes, thank you very much. I want to say good evening to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. So right now, Criminal Justice National, we are working on writing and having ready for release in the fall a racial profiling report. This report is going to advance the campaign to end racial profiling in the U.S. by bringing discriminatory policing practices to light, demonstrating the need for increased police accountability, and amplifying the voices of victims of racial profiling. The report is going to include not just the written report with the whole history of racial profiling up to current date today, but also have a chart with all of the current states all the states that have current anti-profiling laws, and a model legislation for an anti-profiling law, which has all of the suggestions that that we would recommend within it for a good, adequate racial profiling law. Beyond that, we are also working on the reentry toolkit, which was updated in January of this year and posted on the Criminal Justice Resources page on the NAACP website. And the reentry toolkit, we're going to have a training on Google Hangout in late August of this year. The toolkit, what it does is pretty much it gives any NAACP local units or even other local leaders and community-based organizations information on how to run a reentry campaign within their community and how to provide reentry services to returning citizens from incarceration within their community. For instance, it talks about the Ban the Box campaign, which is the campaign to remove the question about a person's criminal history record from the job application, instead asking it during the interview process once you've already seen that the person's qualified for the job and want to learn more about them, and also gives local leaders it gives them information on what they can do to advance this campaign locally, what they can do to advance the campaign on a national scale as well, and other resources. If you were talking to potential employers, it just gives you some information on that, on what you can say to them to show them some incentives for hiring returning citizens.
Wow, that was a lot. And that's definitely some great work with the racial profiling and the toolkit as well. And as we talk about gun violence tonight, I know you all have been working on a policy platform. Can you give us an update on that and let our people in the community know how they can use it?
Well, yeah, definitely. Actually, so the gun violence policy platform is a comprehensive policy platform that seeks to dismantle the different pieces attributing to gun violence in poor communities and communities of color. It explains the problems and the solutions in, for different areas that are factors and that are also impacted by gun violence. For instance, public health, education, public safety. We focus on what the problems are for each one of those areas, and also what the solutions are for each one of those areas when it comes pertaining specifically to gun violence. Yeah, and this can be used by NAACP local units, also other leaders across the country in their campaigns to curb the epidemic of gun violence in the country. And I think we're going to have a press release around it before the end of the year.
All right, Carlton. So let me ask you this. I mean, gun violence has been prevalent for a while. Can you tell us about there's an update on the Stand Your Ground law. Do you know what that update looks like or where it stands right now?
Oh, yeah. It's actually really good that you brought that up. Well, Florida's controversial stand. Well, number one, let me just say from the get-go that NAACP, we are definitely against the way that the Stand Your Ground laws have been applied. It's very discriminatory. And so just starting off with that, I just want to say that some good news is that Florida's controversial Stand Your Ground law has been extended to include Floridians who fire warning shots or threaten to use a gun in self-defense. This was recently signed into law by Governor Rick Scott and was partially inspired by the Marissa Alexander case. I'm not sure if your viewers might be familiar with her case. Pretty much Marissa Alexander is an African-American woman from Jacksonville, Florida. She fired some warning shots into the ceiling of her house during a dispute with her abusive husband. Though no one was injured in the confrontation, she was unable to successfully invoke the Stand Your Ground defense because she couldn't demonstrate that there was any kind of serious bodily injury. So the jury ended up convicting her on 3 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, for which she received 20 years, a 20-year sentence due to the mandatory minimum laws in Florida. And her initial 20-year sentence was overturned by an appellate court in September of last year. And now she has a new trial set for December 1st of this year, and they're going to apply the amendment to the bill to her next trial. So they're thinking that she actually might be able to use Stand Your Ground as a defense now.
Great, Carlton. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for that update. I was following on that case closely, and I'm glad to hear that they've made some adjustments in how that law is applied, because that was really unfortunate what was occurring for her. So thanks. Now we're going to transfer into the hot topic section, and we're talking gun violence. And one of the reasons that we're doing so is because July 13, 2013 was the anniversary of George Zimmerman being acquitted for the murder of Trayvon Martin. And we all know that violence is a serious issue in our community. Our young people are affected at extremely high rates. We can go on with the list of names: Trayvon Martin, Jordan Davis, Renisha McBride, Hadiya Pendleton, Jonathan Ferrell. There was a young boy in Chicago named Marcel Pearson who was gunned down 2 days before his college orientation. 2 days. So he was extremely excited about college, and unfortunately he has passed. So we want to take some time to really talk about how this issue plays a part in our community. But bringing it back to the topic of the anniversary, I'm curious, Avery, where were you when you heard about the verdict of of George Zimmerman being acquitted, and how did you respond?
It's kind of interesting. I was actually at the AXO National Convention. We were in Florida that year, so I was surrounded by people my age, high school students, and we had just finished up. It was like a pool party, or there was a lot of us in the pool, and we were in the lobby, and it was on the TV, and like the verdict had just been given, and all I remember is the lobby like erupting with everybody screaming and disappointed and angry and all the emotion that came with it, and immediately we just began talking about it, and those were some of the conversations that really sparked some people's action after the verdict. And I think it kind of gives me chills talking about it because of how passionate the conversation was. To have conversation be progressive and with that emotion, it was really empowering.
Great, thank you. And in terms of the verdict, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Do you think it was justified? Do you think justice was done with George Zimmerman getting off?
I definitely don't think it was justified at all. But I also was not surprised at the verdict. It's sad to say that. But as disappointing as it was, I wasn't surprised, but it was not justified.
Okay. Okay. Carlton, I'm curious from your perspective, what did that verdict say to you?
Well, I was gonna say number one. I was gonna just tell you what I was doing
Okay.
when the George Zimmerman verdict first came out. I was actually on U Street in D.C. and I was at an establishment that is traditionally, African American based, and it was the Delta Sigma Theta. It was their 100th year anniversary that weekend, that day, and they were out celebrating. It was quite an interesting scene in D.C. There were definitely a lot of people in the streets who looked like they were shocked. A lot of people who looked as if they were really upset and sad, and other people looked like they were scared because they didn't know what was going to happen. How were people going to respond to this? It was interesting because everybody has their own views. So everybody, it seemed like there was a lot going on, and you could see the different responses. But me and myself, I definitely don't think that the verdict is correct or valid. However, as we all know, like I said earlier, the stand your ground law is applied in a very discriminatory fashion. There's been a lot of studies done that have shown that anytime it's a person of color who is claiming the stand your ground defense, there usually is, especially if it's toward, they're claiming self-defense against somebody who's not a person of color. More than likely, they're not going to be able to use the claim. However, if it's the other way around, it seems as if it works in the other person's favor, the person who's not a person of color. So I mean, it's just the application is the problem. That's one problem. There are others as well, but the application is the major problem, and that's the main reason why I think the verdict was not valid.
Okay. Okay. Des,
I definitely look forward to what's going to be done in the future.
Okay. Des, we know that you're from Florida. You're a Florida boy, Tallahassee, all day, every day. I'm sorry, Fort Lauderdale. So tell us, what was your experience like, hearing about Trayvon Martin since you've been away from Florida?
It was definitely something that it rung with me. I was in my home with a few friends, and we kind of were watching it on the news, but we were just sitting together, talking, catching up on the weekend. And I remember seeing it and thinking immediately, what immediately came to me was my little brother. That could be my little brother. My little brother at the time Trayvon was shot, my little brother was 19. Last year when the verdict came down, he was 20. But he's still well within the range of danger statistically, and it was something that was very impactful. I think they didn't get it right because I didn't feel as though it was a jury of his peers. I didn't feel like the stand your ground verdict was applied correctly because the jury instructions were different from what they were told during the course of the trial, and it left a lot of room for error, and that really hurt.
Sammy, so and I agree with what you all are saying in terms of the verdict. I felt as though George Zimmerman would be let off just by the way that Trayvon was being vilified after his death. Although he did absolutely nothing wrong that night, the media was really trying to paint this picture of, a dangerous young black boy who I guess had it coming to him. So Sammy, as we know, Trayvon Martin, he's really kind of ingrained in our psyche as a generation. So how can we keep his memory alive moving forward?
So I think Trayvon's memory is best kept alive by young people. Something we'll talk about later in the show is people really taking action in their local communities. And so we've seen organizations pop up across the country that are addressing stand your ground laws in the local community. You have young people involved with youth in college, such as Avery, who are working in camps and have committed their work on their college campuses to really addressing this issue. The biggest thing we can do to honor Trayvon's legacy is make a decision to do something. And so we definitely want to make sure that we provide resources and support as people want to do things in their local community. Let us know. It could be a letter writing campaign. It could be phone banking. It could be advocating with your state representatives and senators, letting them see your face and see the faces of young people who are disproportionately affected by the violence in our communities. But we know that it's not just an issue of guns. It's an issue of jobs. It's an issue of quality public education. It's an issue of access to mental health services in communities. It's an issue of affordable, safe housing, and how do we ensure that communities have the resources and the businesses and the institutions to thrive. So I think there are a number of issues that really comprise what this gun violence piece looks like. I think gun violence is the manifestation of so many larger issues in our community, but I think we honor Trayvon by making a decision to do something.
So I want to jump in and take us to the next topic, because something that's really, what we're really seeing is that the gun laws are spreading. Earlier this month, we had Georgia pass the Safe Carry Protection Act. This allows guns in churches, schools, bars, government offices, in the airport, and about 70% of the people in Georgia oppose the bill, yet the bill still passed. And the bill is now valid. It's now in full operation. It's been referred to as the Guns Everywhere Act, and it's really called the Safe Carry Protection Act. I would love to start a discussion, maybe starting with you, Avery, because you're a young man who goes to school in Georgia. So this is going to not necessarily affect you, but you got some input. You have some you're a stakeholder in this discussion. So how do you feel about that law being passed?
I'm not surprised by the outcome, but it's very disappointing because it happens so often where our representatives or our officials do not vote in favor of their constituents. And going to school in Atlanta, I saw people protesting. I saw people going to jail for doing civil disobedience and really trying to display how they didn't agree with the bill, yet they still decided to vote on what they wanted personally. So it's disappointing that they passed it when 70% of us did not approve of it. But the fact that what the bill actually consists of, I think it's worrisome to think that everyone can have guns everywhere because of this bill. And it worries me because people who feel the need to have a gun everywhere worry me, because I don't know if they're mentally stable enough to have guns everywhere. So instead of reducing the threats, we're increasing people's threats, I guess.
Yeah, they're increasing it exponentially. So there was, after the Sandy Hook shooting, someone said that the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And I would like to direct this towards you two, Jemiah and Carlton. How do you guys feel about that? Because I think, Sandy Hook was a school. So now we're going to have more guns on campuses. How do you feel about that?
You can go.
I was just going to say, I read so often online young kids who have gotten access to guns in their homes and have shot themselves because, the guns weren't hidden properly and the bullets weren't kept separately from the guns. So to think about teachers in schools having guns and they're supposed to protect students, I just think that so much could go wrong by just having weapons on site every day. Like anything can happen, and I completely disagree with that sentiment.
All right, Carlton.
I actually want to bring up a story that happened yesterday. Actually, not yesterday, but the first day that the Anywhere, Everywhere gun law was enacted. I think that was July 1st of this year, I believe. In Valdosta, Georgia, there was an incident where there was an African-American gentleman who was at a shopping center, a retail store, and there was another gentleman in there. They both were armed with their guns in their holsters, and the African-American gentleman asked the other armed gentleman to display his gun permit, and he was like, okay, I don't know why I need to do that. And so he didn't display it, and then the African-American gentleman asked him again. He still didn't display it. So then the African-American gentleman lifted his gun from the holster. He didn't take it out of the holster. He just lifted it from the holster. And The other gentleman, bought his item, still didn't, acknowledge the question or the request, and then left and called the police. And then, the African American gentleman was arrested. Now, the reason why I bring that up is because just talking about what Avery just said about, like, is everybody who has a gun, or is everybody stable? I mean, the people I've known who own guns, they take it very seriously, and they're very responsible with handling their guns. It's not something that they are frivolous with and go around trying to play games with it like it's a BB gun. It's something they take very serious, like you take a car, a brand new car that you buy. So, time will tell is the best thing I could say. We already saw one incident. I'm sure there'll be others. I don't know why this was passed. I don't know if there were any backdoor deals that were going on, especially looking at the numbers that you just brought up. But either way, it's already enacted, and time will tell. But yeah, I mean, I'll tell you right now, I would not feel safe in Georgia, especially because they expanded their stand your ground laws through this act. So I mean, you can claim stand your ground if you feel somebody is, doing something on your property or potentially could do something on your property. If they're, if you feel that they're threatening somebody else, you can shoot them and kill them and claim stand your ground as defense to get off. I mean, it's very dangerous. It's like Wild Wild West.
All right, so the last question I would like to direct back at Avery. Another place where this law applies are places like bars. And in colleges, you see sometimes students go to bars, and now there's going to be the mix of alcohol and drugs. And or alcohol and guns. What do you think the impact of that could be in Georgia?
I think we don't have to think too hard, and we know that it'll further prove the point of why we did not want this bill to be passed. But being a college student and knowing that college students are quite a handful without the alcohol being present, making alcohol present and then allowing them to be legally possessing firearms isn't a fair equation. So.
Yeah. Sammy, you got any thoughts on that?
So one of the things that I think is interesting, Avery, is the fact that you're in college in Georgia at what is one of the most historic HBCUs in the country. So our next segment really deals with how young people can be engaged and can really participate in activism around gun violence. Avery, talk to us a second about some of the things that you're hoping to do on your campus at Morehouse with young people around this issue. I know you mentioned that you're working for a particular summer camp this year that has a really great focus around young people being engaged around this issue of violence. Talk to us about some things you think young people can do in their community.
I really think it's a change in how we lead, because so often I guess we see in the older generation, it's the same people doing the same work. So I think what it involves, and definitely what I've been trying to preach this summer, is having people do little things, because little things mean a lot. So a lot of time youth are put in situations where they see something about to happen, or they know someone who's about to do something, or they know someone who's living the life that can eventually result in gun violence. And I think it's a matter of being a leader when no one is there to watch you. So instead of trying to, you don't have to always organize, you don't have to always put on an event, but just be present when things like this occur. You don't have to always talk, but just be there when you know someone, to encourage them to choose a different path, or when you see something's about to go on and your friend is involved in the situation, being brave enough to take them out of that situation.
So what are some of the things that you're doing with the summer camp that you're working for this summer?
I am working for a summer camp that is, it is government housing or assisted living in Des Moines, and it's a very diverse community, and they've been having some problems with violence. Recently this summer, just before I actually got in town, there was a shooting. A 19-year-old girl, she was killed while she was walking at night. Once it was around 9 o'clock. And what the project really is designed to do is to combat violence in the community. And what we are doing is getting the students to express their feelings toward violence and the solution that they have through art and photography. So we're uniting the community by taking pictures. creating interviews, building data about how people feel about the community, and really trying to change the social environment so people will feel more together and will speak up in those situations when they see things arising.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we hear about this notion of young people. We have the 50th commemoration of Freedom Summer that happened several weeks ago in Jackson, Mississippi, and you see young people doing things related to Freedom Summer all across the country. Jamaya, as the staff member for the Youth and College Division who's leading our gun violence campaign, if I'm a young person, let's say I'm 14, 15, 16 years old, I'm in a local community, what's the first step? What do I do first to really take action around this issue?
Well, I would say being a member of the Youth and College Division would be a significant step, because we are going to be having some targeted efforts all across the country where we're spending time with our young people, talking with them about solutions that they want to pursue in their communities. So I would say becoming a member and really making yourself known that you want to spend some time working on gun violence and solving this issue in their city. And there's so much that can happen. Outside of events that bring communities together, our young people, they can meet with elected officials. So many of our young people don't even realize that, but this is a demographic that we need in front of our elected officials talking about gun violence, because they're the ones that are so affected by that. So we're really excited to work with our young people this year, and I would definitely say becoming a member, whether it's the Youth and College Division or another organization in your community, becoming involved would be the first step.
Awesome, awesome. Now, Carlton, earlier Jamaya sent a couple of questions for you around the gun violence policy platform. So if I'm a 14 or 15-year-old young person in my community, I'm trying to get involved with this issue. I joined the Youth and College Division, and they share with me the gun violence policy platform. Is that something I have to do all at one time? Is it something that young people can do in pieces as they are working in their community? What's the best way after joining the Youth and College Division? What's the best way young people can really digest what's available in the gun violence policy platform?
Well, the way that the platform is broken up, like I said, there's different areas of focus on, like gun control, public health, education. The reason why we made it so comprehensive and more broad is because that way, anybody could take it and tailor it to whatever's going on in their local community, to their particular situation. For some communities, maybe education is something that they want to stress more when it comes to gun violence. And other ones, it might be public safety, or maybe gun control, or, there's so many, public health. There's a lot of different areas that it focuses on, all pertaining to gun control. To dismantling gun violence in urban communities. And so, it would really depend on the circumstances of that person's area that they're trying to rehabilitate.
Awesome, awesome. And producers are giving us the 1 minute mark. So I'm going to ask this last question to Avery, but I really want everybody who's watching the show live and who's going to watch the show during playback, I want you to give your response to this next question on Twitter, on social media, using the hashtag YCLive. Avery, we've got literally 30 seconds, brother, so we've got to go to our next segment. In one sentence, tell us why the issue of gun violence is so important for young people to address in their local communities.
Because it could be you.
Wow, 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 wow. Avery, that was deep, brother. Again, all of our young people that are watching the show, take an opportunity to tell us in one sentence, 140 characters, why working on this issue is so important for young people to be involved in their local communities. Hit us up using the hashtag YCLive. Listen, we're out of time for this month's episode. As always, it's been an amazing conversation. For all of our youth and college members who are planning to join us in Viva Las Vegas, July 19th through the 23rd, is going down like 4 flat tires in Las Vegas for the 105th annual NAACP convention. Mr. Avery Jackson is going to be there, so make sure y'all hit him up on Twitter and connect with him. Avery, thanks so much for joining us, brother. We appreciate you. We appreciate the work that you're doing with the division around gun violence. Carlton, thanks for the work you do on staff. Desmond and Jamaya, thank you for what you continue to do. Youth in college, make sure you get your parental consent, your waiver, and your medical treatment forms in so we don't have any hiccups or incidents while we're in Las Vegas having a great time for the annual convention. Again, y'all, we love you. We want you to keep the conversation going. One sentence, 140 characters. Why is gun violence important for young people to work on? Hashtag YC Live. And until next time, peace and power. We're out.
Peace.
Take care.